Good morning, everyone. Give me a second as I double check everything's working. Gotta check that you can hear me. Let's see here. Check out the Pixologic Twitch channel as well as the Facebook event. So you might hear double audio for a second. Give me just a second as I double check that. Cool, that's working. And let's check Twitch. Sweet. Alright, that is on as well. Alright, give me just a minute to get set up and we'll start this live stream. In the meanwhile, maybe I'll regale you with some music. Pedro Cudo, what's up, man? Thanks for joining the stream. I just met Pedro at the ZBrush Summit last week, I think it was. Giovanni, Pablo, what's going on, guys? Saludos. I was just gonna post on my Facebook and Instagram that my live stream is starting. And Instagram used to do this thing where it used to automatically be able to share whatever I posted on Instagram to Facebook. But I think Facebook had a hack last week, or Instagram or their mutual connection had a hack last week. And so now that auto share isn't working anymore. I gotta write the same thing twice. Psh. Lame. Alright, done with that. Double check that. Alright, cool. Joanne Ragudo on Twitch. What's up, Joanne? Good to see you. I saw you at the summit as well, but I didn't get to meet you. I think it was your mom with you there. Summit's a madhouse. Apologies. Always running around. Let's see. Pedro is saying, yep, awesome 3 days. For sure. Yeah, if you guys get a chance to come out for the next one, definitely do. Okay. Alright, gonna lower the volume for a second to talk about some 3D printing stuff, and then we'll jump back into the ZBrush sculpting that we've been doing, that I've been doing on Ryan Winch's Space Pilgrim character. So I've been trying to do that kind of live for you guys. I've only put in about 5 hours into it or so, only during the streams, and let's see where we're at with him, so you can know what to expect in a little bit. Yeah, so 4 sessions on this character, each about an hour or so. Switch to the sculpting material, do anti-aliasing so it looks a bit better for you. And so all we've done at this point, turn on perspective, is kind of block out the character's base shapes. Then we worked on this backpack and some of these elements like the backpack straps. And then last week worked on the face. So the face got to a place that I like it. I don't love it, but I like it. It's a good start. Matches the concept pretty well. You got those big doe eyes. And today I guess I'm going to start working up the hair and all this clothing and try to get it all to kind of more of a finished pass, pass 1. And then from there, we'll keep refining, and I might do some sessions outside of ZBrush stream to kind of start wrapping this project up. But before that, I guess for those of you that have no idea who I am, my name is Aiman Akhtar. I'm a 3D artist in Los Angeles, and I've been doing a lot of 3D printing projects for the past 4 years. Notably, as of late, I'm launching my own toy line, Fungusaurs, on November 16th. So please check that out. All of these toys were prototyped on a 3D printer, Form 2. Tried to make them pretty cute. And I do all sorts of 3D printing projects. Like that's my corgi Kuma that I put a mask on that blew up on Reddit for a little bit. Printed on my Raise 3D N2 Plus. So those are the 2 printers I have, the Raise 3D N2 Plus and the Formlabs Form 2. I get asked that question pretty often. Some professional projects I've had the chance to help work on. The Overwatch project with Alliance Studios, large-scale 3D printing. Another large-scale 3D printing. What do you call it? Evil Knievel statue. Some stop-motion animation 3D printing. So these are prints that got painted and directly put into stop-motion animation workflow at Stupid Buddy Studios, makers of Robot Chicken. Vinyl tie prototyping. So I've kind of been bouncing around doing all sorts of 3D printing projects. Lately, I've been doing a lot of miniatures at Sky Castle Studios, the makers of HeroForge.com. And what HeroForge is basically a miniature customizer, so you can pick your character, all sorts of proportions, all sorts of races, like a dwarf, and you can even change like the type of base, you could change the pose of the character, and you can accessorize them. So you put that sword, and let's put a sniper rifle. Why not? So this badass dwarf now is ready to print, and you can just add it to your card and print it, and then it gets sent out to Shapeways where they print it out for you and send it back to you. So this is a pretty successful business for miniatures and 3D printing. I wanted to show some other stuff related to that right now. There's this Kickstarter that's been going on recently, the Lost Dragons 3D printable dragons, and it's raised over 50,000. But how should I put this? I'm super jealous of how this Kickstarter has been able to raise so much money because they've focused on their niche audience very well. It's set up by a YouTuber who's got a decent chunk of subscribers, and what they're making are dragon models that are 3D printable, and that's what they're selling is 3D printable files. Few modelers, few different types of modelers, but basically what they're selling is not even physical product. They're selling just the 3D printable files for tabletop miniature gaming. So it goes to show you how big tabletop miniature gaming world is, that if you target your niche properly and you get the word out to the right people, you can run a whole business on it. You can get funding for your Kickstarter and just make some cool dragons. So I think these guys made something like, I don't know, 10 dragons or something, maybe more than that. But you guys can check that out on the Lost Dragons Kickstarter page. And if you're into dragons and want to help out someone who's doing 3D printing and sculpting for their own Kickstarter, please check them out. I'll drop the link in the Twitch chat and the Facebook chat. I do like supporting Kickstarters, especially for cool projects. I supported another one recently. Let's see. Kickstarter, miniatures, dogs. Let's see if it comes up. Here we go. Animal Adventures, Tales of Dungeons and Doggies. Now, mind you, I never played Dungeons and Dragons as a kid. I didn't do anything with miniatures, but now that I'm working for a company, I'm exposed to all sorts of Dungeons and Dragons nerdiness. Different kind of nerdiness than my nerdiness, but it's fun to learn all about it. And this is a Kickstarter where they are mass producing a whole bunch of different miniature dogs as rogues, bards, monks, wizards, and it's just a brilliant idea. So I backed this one because I wanted the whole set of miniature dogs, which is awesome. The husky paladin, the cattle dog ranger, the Dachshund sorcerer. So since we're speaking about Kickstarters for a second, wanted to show you guys a couple of other printers that are now or have just funded on Kickstarter. This one was the Ono printer, just $99 resin printer, specifically designed for miniature printing, I'd say. Let me turn it off. And this was a printer that claimed that it could use your phone to do the 3D printing. So if you watch the video, you'll see that you turn on, you're using your phone as the projector, the light source. You pour resin onto this thing, and then you get it going. Now, as far as I know, this printer is kind of a bust, despite the fact that they raised $2 million to do this Kickstarter. I don't think they were able to deliver a working product, because if I check the comments and the updates, they've just started shipping after a while. I think this project was funded. Let me see when it was funded. Usually it says the date it was funded, like right at the top. That's strange. Well, in any case, I think this was funded a year or two ago, and the latest update is filled with comments which people are saying, you know, it's going to take a while to get it. So you got to be careful of backing printers on Kickstarter because of that reason. It takes forever sometimes, and sometimes doesn't deliver at all. But there is another one that just came out, the Spark Maker, which raised about $376,000, and this was recent. I think this was like last week. And this printer is shipped by a company that has shipped printers in the past before using Kickstarter, and it looks to be, you know, better quality. It is not using your phone, and it is a complete SLA 3D printing set. So if you want to do small-scale SLA prints, SparkMaker might be something to look into, because you can still pre-order them, and I think they're only like, yeah, here, see, $199 or basically like $250 or something to get the printer. So which is a solid price for a printer. Now keep in mind, the two that I use are the Formlabs Form 2 and the Raise 3D N2 Plus. These are both semi-professional grade printers that are about $3,000 or so. So I'd look into the cheaper ones, the Kickstarter ones, when they do come out, because they're pretty, you know, decent when they first come out. If they come out. Okay, cool. So shared those things. If you do want to watch more of my previous presentations, you can go to Pixologic.com ZBrushLIVE Presenters, and you can get a sense of the kind of stuff that I do by scrolling down and finding the guy in the hat. And so I tend to talk a lot about 3D printing using ZBrush, and you know, my segment's called Ideas to Reality, which I focus on just coming up with whatever the heck I want to and then making it real. So you can see some more of my work on here. the fungusaurs that I'm launching in November, a 3D printed dress, all sorts of 3D printing related to my business, which it helps make maquettes for animation and game pitches, as well as anyone that wants to translate their 2D idea to 3D. I help them do that. And I can show you some stuff related to that right now. Anyways, previous past streams on here. So you can see some of the stuff I've worked on, large-scale prints with you guys, more of my fungusaur ideas, as well as like the Aquaman costume that I prototyped, things like that. So that's the primer on all that stuff. Cool, cool, cool. People joining on Twitter chat, giving me thumbs up. What's up, y'all? Facebook chat as well, thumbing, cool. Joanne saying I wasn't at the summit. Family emergency, so I couldn't even stream it. Sorry about that, Joanne. Thought I saw you. So all sorts of people. Alright, cool. Let's get this party started. What I wanted to show you first is I can't really show most of the jobs that I do with my business, and that's just the nature of it. But I can try to show you something. I'm going to forward a print photo to myself. Give me a sec, I'm just forwarding a photo to myself so I can show you guys. Here it is. Let me lower the screen down. Alright, so this is a print that I just got to do recently for an artist named Kafis out of San Francisco. And he's sharing this model already live on his site, so I don't think there's any issues with showing it to you guys. But this was a 12-inch 3D print on a Formlabs Form 2 done in pieces. So this was done with the legs, the body, and the arms all parted out. And then this boombox in the back all parted out. And then assembled together. And this is how I lit it. I've got this kind of, I can show you actually if you want to see it. Let me make this camera a bit bigger. There we go. All right. So this is my little photo studio setup, which I use. It's a pretty simple kind of like translucent white box with a ramp in it, like a ramp which I've attached a black felt cloth to. And so this kind of kit ships online on Amazon. I believe it's only like 20 or 30 bucks because it's all collapsible. And you can just put this somewhere in your room, put lights up around it, and then you can start printing. Start taking photos. What I like about it, and of course I don't have my flashlight to demonstrate on me, but you can just put one light over the top. Say if I use my phone light, for example, just over the top area, then you can get a good diffuse light going right through the mesh. So it's pretty through the whole, you can get a really good lighting from just one light at the top is what I'm trying to say. And that's what I did with this character that you see on screen right now. That's basically just one light from the top. Now this was a pretty bright day, so I'm getting a lot of like diffused light from around the room, and I think I had a few lamps on, so it's bright overall. That's providing the ambient light, and then this hot spotlight up at the top is providing the main light that creates all this nice shading. So I wanted to show you for a second how I go about taking a photo like this and doing some basic editing on it. Now, I don't believe this is a raw photo. This is just a photo from my iPhone. We can open it up in Photoshop and take a look. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do is just lasso out all the not black area. Just selecting all that. Make sure I select all of this edge. There we go. And I'm going to do it on a new layer. I'm just going to fill the whole area with the same color black. Now if you zoom in closely, you'll see that this stuff isn't perfectly aligned, but that's fine, because what I'm going to do first now is go image adjustments and levels. Now I can do it from here, and that's going to affect the mesh, affect the image, and I won't be able to go back. So instead I could do it from down here in the layers tab. I can add a levels layer, and that way I can adjust it later. So what I'm going to do is basically grab this end and pull it down just a little bit so that it's completely dark and black. And I can zoom out to see what's happening here on the whole thing. And this basically is just affecting the black channel. So I'm going to select that end and then update the black on my... strange. Let's fill it again. There we go. So that starts giving us a bit better of a seam. Now let's adjust the levels again. You can make it slightly brighter than I want and make the background almost completely disappear. So just a little tweaking around with the level slider, and we're getting close to what we want. I could also try to just crop in a bit. I think that'll help this image. You know what? These days, it's all about Instagram, so it's all about square images. So let me do that, and I'll leave the quarter in there for scale. Maybe I should use the banana for scale. That's what the internet likes, bananas. Sean Lake stopping by to say hello. What's up, Sean? Good to see you at the summit briefly as well. Yeah, do your errands, man. Do what you gotta do. Alright. Cool. Okay, so now with that done, I'm going to duplicate this. I'm going to apply a sharpening effect on it. So what I tend to do, and this is just my workflow for the kind of images that I like to create from this stuff. So I'm going to go to Filter, Sharpen, Unsharp Mask. And this lets you use a couple of sliders to really figure out how much sharpening you want. If you crank up the radius, you're going to get sharpening overall. So that's too much. Then you can tone it down. But I do like pretty sharp, crisp images for prints so that you can actually see the detail. So it's hard to tell for you guys probably, but blurred, not blurred. Blurred, not blurred. And generally when you take photos, especially with the phone, you can't expect the best quality, but you're basically tapping on the phone to tell it where to focus on. And in this case, I wanted it to focus a bit on this area, so the boombox is going to be a bit blurred anyway. Alright, so now, if we want, we can apply a photo filter on top of this. Not warming necessarily. Let's try cooling filter. Some cooling blue. And that just helps to tone down the orangeness, because it just felt a bit too orange to me. And we can really play with that with the color balance by adding a color balance slider. So right now I'm adjusting just the midtones. It's kind of cool if you make it slightly purple. And let's adjust the shadows. Make those shadows a bit bluer, and I'll go to the highlights and make those a bit yellower or orange. And just subtle effect, but let's see, that's probably just too much in general, so I'll cut this effect by 50%. There we go. It's pretty solid. And I can adjust the highlights so that they're not so bright. So we'll do a shadows highlights layer. Or maybe just tone down the exposure a slight bit, so there's no areas that are blowing out. So you can see basically all of my adjustments happening in a row. From there to there. Might come back to these levels and just not have it blow out so much. I don't like that white hot spotlight. Yeah, digging it. Now if I want to really be picky, I can come in and zoom in here, and I can select all these areas that are just kind of white, little hair fragments and dust and stuff. And I'll show you how I tend to get rid of them. Basic print photo editing. Just selecting any of these little white dots. And you can do this for issues on your print if you really want to cover those up as well. My prints tend to come out pretty clean because I've been doing this for a while. Alright. So once you've selected all the little areas you want fixed or removed or cleaned on the image itself, I'm going to go to Edit Fill. And this is one thing I like about Photoshop. Instead of foreground color, you can set it to Content Aware. And bam, it just kind of fixes all those for you. It analyzes the surroundings and sees that it's all black, and it says, okay, get rid of these white spots. You can also, conversely, just use the clone stamp tool. Select an area with Option click, and then just kind of fill it on an area nearby. And it'll cover up any of those issues. Yeah, and so this image is solid and ready to post. I may or may not add my company logo to it. Heck, I did it with my company, so I'll add my company logo to it. Let's see. Let's open that up. Right there. Drop that in place. Sure. Up at the top. Move it down. And voila. Kind of like a finished thing. Save it out as PNG. And I'll post it to Instagram later after this stream, because ain't nobody care about posting and shit. Alright, what do I call this? Kfis print fin. Okay, actually, you know what? I may be able to show you some prints, some stuff that I sent to Kfis here. So go to my jobs. I don't think I have any PNGs in that file. May have some renders though. So there's the parts, and you can see it all parted out. It was the whole body, and that's all hollowed out. The legs, I hollowed these out as well, and the arms and the boombox, all of these pieces are hollowed out with ventilation holes at the bottoms. You can kind of see that one on the bottom of the arm. And there's kind of the finished image that we just made out of that print. So hopefully another satisfied client, and we'll continue making more of these. I like doing the big prints. The small stuff, it's not really worth the time to do all the minis, but the big stuff, it's something people definitely need help on. So I can't show most of my client prints, but I can show something that is kind of cool right now that I'm working on, which is this giant base. Now this was prepped for me by a friend of mine, Kyle. And Kyle is a concept artist over at Aaron Sims Creative, and he's working on this as a personal project for a friend. I'm not going to show you the whole thing because it's a client project, but the base is pretty dope. And what I wanted to show you about it is that it's made up of multiple Form 2 prints. So this, you can actually see where the lines are intersecting and how Kyle keyed this whole thing out so that it would be able to print on a Form 2 and we could get the detail that we want. Now we're doing this with the whole character and the body too, so here's one of the characters, and you can see that's a 12-inch character print that's going to be sitting on this piece. That's going to be about, I don't know, I think it's over here somewhere, but it's basically this, and then there'll be a whole secondary giant character accompanying it. But what I wanted to show you is how I go about, doing this. So this is all kind of keyed together, and yesterday I epoxied all the pieces together just using 2-part epoxy. Now this is one that I pick up from my local store called Burbank House of Hobbies, but it's basically what you're looking for is the 5-minute cure epoxy or quick cure, any kind. It doesn't matter what the brand is. You could use Gorilla Glue. I like the Bob Smith Industries brand. That's going to be super hard for you guys to see that little tiny thing. But Bob Smith Industries has a lot of cool epoxies and resins. What I like about the quick cure kind is that it's fast. So it's bad if you don't have a good working speed, but if you're working fast, then you can get this whole thing done in like, half an hour. And you can see that all the epoxy tends to go through and get stuck to whatever's below it. So keep a lot of paper towel handy. Next steps for this, now that I've got it all epoxied, I'm going to want to sand it a bit and fill in any of the remainder of these gaps with a putty. So what I like to use for that is this one, Tamiya putty. Basic putty. It's not that complicated. You can use all sorts of putties. This is the one that I like. And you can use something like a rubber finger tool. Now, a rubber finger tool is exactly what you think it is. It's a rubber finger. So you put a little putty on it, and then you can just rubber finger it. I'm probably going to not... I was thinking I could show you a bit on this demo. So let's see if I try how that goes. And then we'll start ZBrushing shortly. First, let me see if you guys have any questions going on here. All right, nothing on Twitch. Okay, Facebook. Brett, what's up, man? Thanks for joining. Some people dig these giant prints that I've been doing, especially people with like Formlabs printers. They know how big this is, because this is probably like a week's worth of printing that I'm holding in my hand right now. And right now I'm just ripping off the back of this paper towel, and I'll just sand it off. Bottom of the base is super easy to clean up. You can just sand things away that you don't like. I think I'll need to get my sander from outside. Alright, so step one, just ripping the paper towel off the back. So at least already now you can tell that's what the base looks like. It's a pretty cool base. And I'm going to start by just sanding this down a bit and then covering it with putty. I'm not going to cover the whole thing with putty, and I should probably wear gloves because this epoxy is just not perfectly dry yet. I'll be right back. Okay, So, got a simple sanding cube. Got some gloves that I should have put on before I started this whole thing. Okay, so that's interesting. Let's do the double audio thing on Facebook here. Turn that off. Okay. Okay. So I guess if you're curious, these are what kind of gloves these are. Black nitrile Amex Pro. This is the brand that I ordered from Amazon. And yeah, exam grade, latex free. Okay, so what I want to do is basically just sand a little bit of my base until this paper towel stuff falls off. So sticky it'll grab more paper towel. Okay, so I'm basically just going to take the sanding cube, do this a little bit, but I'm going to do it a bit lower over here above my trash can. And typically, if you have a porch or like, you know, place outside, do that there. Do this there. Now, if you're doing a lot of sanding, then wear a mask too. This is hilarious, by the way, if you guys can't see what I'm doing. Like, what are you doing down there? So, sanding this paper towel stuff off the base. And I'll probably use a sanding cube with a little bit more grit. So this one you can barely tell, but it's a pretty high grit, and this is for smoothing finishes. I might try to get a sanding cube that's a bit easier to sand with, remove more material. And then I'll have to remove a bit of this epoxy. I might actually take an X-Acto knife to clean up some of this epoxy, sand it down, and then I'm going to use that rubber finger tool and fill in some of the putty. So let me show you that part because don't have time to do a whole demo for you. But I can show you what that would look like. You get a little bit of this putty. A little bit goes a long way onto the rubber finger tool. Just like so. And you can see what I got, basically like that much, not much. Or you can conversely even take it from the tube directly and start putting it onto the area you want. I'm going to cover up this tube because otherwise it tends to dry up the putty. Find an area where you see an obvious gap, like that, say that one, and just fill it in. And the rubber finger tool is perfect for this because you can kind of just rub away any areas and just fill it in. Now you don't need to be perfectly precise with this patching because you're going to go over this with a, I'm going to go over this with a sanding cube anyway. So it's going to need more sanding in order to remove any of this extra putty on the surface. But that's basically the patching process. And once I'm done sanding, once I'm done putting this gray putty to fix it up, then the whole thing's going to be primed and then painted. So you won't notice these lines at the end of the process at all. Ideally, if you could key in a way that doesn't produce lines where everything is kind of hidden, that's even better. But you can't do that sometimes with all prints. So just wanted to show you a bit of that process. I'm not going to do the whole thing because you would be bored out of your mind. And also, I tend to listen to, you know, music or an audiobook while I do this, so that it's more entertaining for me. But I like to drop a little bit of 3D printing know-how and knowledge for you guys as a thanks for tuning into my stream amidst all the ZBrush stuff. So let's scroll this stuff down. You can see the infinity mirror. And we'll start up ZBrush now and start working on this project again, Ryan Winch's Space Pilgrim character. I think his eyes are a bit too big still. He looks a bit Smeaglish, and those eye bags under his eyes make him look a bit older than he is. But I think once we start refining the whole thing, we'll start seeing it come together a bit more. Let me also pull up the concept. Let's see, there we go. So there's the concept for the character, and this is when he was younger, and so now he's a bit older. He's age 14, and he's seen some shit. I mean, he is traveling around space looking for his mom, so there would be some shit to see. But I'm going to keep this concept off to the side, and we're going to just try to sculpt it up in the next hour or two as, you know, as detailed as we can. Not much you can do in an hour. Alright, put this away, that away. Take a sip. Alright, so if you guys have any questions, 3D printing related, sculpting related, ZBrush related, or just want to talk to me about whatever, except politics. I do not want to talk about, God, it's so crazy what's happening here in the States right now. Like, they just basically rushed a Supreme Court nomination into existence because they wanted to make a point, and they being the Republicans. It's insane, like how, you know, there could be rape allegations, there could be all sorts of controversy surrounding a judge, but they're just basically going to ram it through because they can. So don't get me started talking about politics. Aside from that, ask me anything you want. Alright, cool. So I'm going to put this off to the side here. Load up ZBrush, and we can get the ball started. And what I'm going to try to do this time as I stream is try to work the entire mesh at the same time. So I'm not going to work just one area. I'm going to try to work a lot of areas so that we can make progress overall, rather than just kind of get stuck in one place like the head like we did a bit last time. And that's pretty normal. I tend to get stuck on the head first as I start a character, because it's the head. It's the most interesting part, and that's the part you want to jump into and start sculpting and working. But it's not necessarily the best idea to just work on the head. You can see some of the body blocking I did. I tend to block things out a bit anatomically so that I know how the character's spine is going, how their body is going, and then I start laying out pieces on top of it. And this is just my workflow. But I like knowing the basics of a character's anatomy as I pose that character. Especially because this one's a stylized character. It doesn't need a lot of really specific anatomy. And it'll be clothed anyway. But everyone's got their process. So I'm going to come up to the hair, and I may turn on Sculptris Pro right now in order to do some larger adjustments and not care about the topology a bit. Because looking at the reference, he's got this one big chunk here, a couple of smaller chunks coming out of this. And that's one good thing Sculptris Pro is really great for. You can just grab and not care about the topology, so to speak. This one seems to be going kind of like straight down. Not that straight down, this straight down. Probably up a little bit, down a little bit. So give you a sense of actually having hair. That's the thing with sculpting hair, is just figuring out the big shapes first, and then you can come back and address the small stuff. So don't get caught up in doing the small stuff right away with hair. Have been thinking these days about changing my stream time away from Monday mornings, because, you know, people are busy Monday mornings. But I wanted to just have a time where I could start off my week doing what I want, sculpting the things I want to sculpt. Just take a little me time before I start the rest of the week working with other people and for other people. Although these days, it's kind of a mixed bag. I'm working for myself a lot, trying to launch my Fungusaurus toy line and game, and making an augmented reality game. It's a lot of work, especially the one, the ambitious kind that I'm trying to make, something like Pokemon Go mixed with Tamagotchi or something. So having your virtual pets, a lot of man hours, a lot of just logistics, a lot of figuring things out as part of the game development process. Being a first-time game developer, it's all very fascinating and fun, but it's a lot of work. And I'm going to try to wrap up Ryan's project here in a couple of weeks so that we can get back to those Fungusaurs and I can show you some of that fun. Right now I'm more of in a Maya stage with that project anyway, doing more character animation, doing more, and there's my dog. Sometimes corgis do that and you can't stop them because that's their job. They're trying to protect you. It's kind of their function. Can be a bit of an annoying function. Alright, so with hair, trying to get it to radiate out from a central point as much as you can. This guy's got kind of a square head, so it's hard. Hold on, I'm going to do something about my dog. Come on, come here. You gonna stay? Okay. No, shush. You can hear my dog kind of rumbling below us right now. And if you want to see him, lift him up. Oof. This is Kuma. Say hi, Kuma. Hi. Hi, everyone. Hi, streamers. This stream would be much more popular if he was doing the streaming. You can tell he's coned right now, wearing this little tube that he's not too happy about because he's been biting his butt too much, and that's not fun for him or anyone. Come here. But gotta just give him some attention sometimes so he doesn't get too, well, he gets all the attention he wants all the time. Corgis, I want to be reborn as a corgi next lifetime. Shh. Quiet. Alright, so back in the stream now. Hopefully Kuma's going to keep it down. Really alert today. Alright. So, alright, I'm going to put him away. Hold on. Alright, sorry about that. Sometimes I have to put Kuma in the bedroom so he doesn't bark up a storm. Alright, so getting those big base shapes for the hair kind of in. Got to look at it from all angles, try to see that it's working. Working with the concept. And it's hard to match a 2D concept right away because, I mean, one-to-one, because when you do try to match a 2D concept from one angle, it may not match the 2D concept from the other angle. So that's our job as 3D sculptors, is to kind of put that knowledge, that practice that we've been putting into 3D sculpting and use it. It's not really a one-to-one translation, I guess is what I'm trying to say. That's the art part. Okay. There we go. Now you'll notice I'm trying to keep all of this hair pretty much tight to the head. Not trying to have any big gaps below or anything like that. And if I was really sculpting for toys, I'd draft it all, meaning I'd make sure that all of this was going directly into the head. So trying to match this concept. Looks like these hair are kind of coming downward a bit. Inflate those up slightly. Dynamesh them down. If my Dynamesh is working, it is not. There, Dynamesh that down. Make sure Sculptris Pro is off when I smooth sometimes. Sculptris Pro is great for like not caring about the topology and then just really having fun with it. But I eventually like to tone things down. So with the hair, the way I like to do it is you find those lines, the main lines, and then you can start doing these little mini chunks. We're just with the damn standard tool right now. And what you want to do is kind of do a bit of spiraling. Learned this technique from Mike DeFeo. And the idea is you want to kind of do not just straight lines, but have them kind of come around this big chunk. And that's more natural to what hair does and feels like and looks like. Now, it probably doesn't matter what I do to these big hair clumps much anyways, because I'm going to cover these with Dylan Ekron's hair tubes. And I'll show you guys that a bit later in the workflow. And the name of the game here is basically, what is the word I'm looking for? Randomness? Yeah. You want to try to make this as random and looking as possible. And so you got to move your hands and brush a bit more randomly. It's kind of doing a first pass over all of this. There we go. So it's alright if it's a little lumpy right now. Not ideal, but it'll do for a first pass. Another thing you can do if you want to do a bunch of strokes at the same time is you can apply something like alpha 54 here, or even alpha 60 or 61, like these basic multi-channel alphas. 55 is probably better for us. And you can come streak over the whole thing at the same time. Probably not with, let's see, one of these. Let's see, not dots. Let's do a freehand with increasing the lazy radius, and also under stroke can get rid of the lazy step. And this should try to be a bit more smooth. There we go. This way you can add some more volume if you want. one way. Increase that lazy mouse radius a little bit. Go at it a bit smoothly. And that's starting to give us like a good first blocking in of the hair. Maybe I won't use the standard, I'll use clay for that technique. Might yield a bit better, cleaner result. And I'll try not using alpha 55 because it's so dotty. I'll try using alpha 59 or alpha 61. There. Turn on the lazy mouse, turn off the step. There we go. Getting really smooth, clean now. And the good thing about the clay brush is it'll just kind of tack stuff on rather than try to mesh it in. Very additive sculpting. Pull this back a little bit. A lot of the sculpting that I like to do is just basically keep it as low poly as possible and then just use the move brush. That isn't always doable though. So bouncing around between inflate, dam standard, clay, trying to find these volumes as well as pinch. Trying to find like sharper edges, points. You can always come back in and define some of these larger chunks using dam standard. I'm going to pull up the concept here on the right as well. Check if you guys have any questions. Indie response saying the sass is real with him. Yes, that is. My dog is pretty sassy. He wants to be present. Yep, he always likes the attention. Okay, morning for me, Giovanni, on Facebook. It's 6 o'clock for you, but in LA it's 9 a.m. on a Monday. Mr. Animation saying Snake Hook's hair helps with the hair tips. Definitely does. Because you can then, with Snake Hook, kind of just pull these tips slightly more interesting shapes. Like that, and you can kind of be a bit more directional. So still trying to find like the real voice of this character, which is pretty common after like, you know, only about 4-hour sessions. Take some time to find, you know, what your character's really trying to say, what the story is trying to convey, the emotion. But it's a process of refinement. You keep hitting it until you refine it. And really any piece of work isn't really ever done. Art is just abandoned. Although I think one of the best pieces of art recently was the Banksy piece that shredded itself. Did you guys see that? It was a piece of art that sold for $1.3 million, and shortly as the auction ended, the piece self-destructed, so to speak. The painting frame had a shredder built in. So as soon as the painting sold, the shredder got activated. I think Banksy might have even been there in the room. That's the good thing about not knowing what Banksy is or is supposed to look like, is that he can pull off all sorts of fun stuff. Alright, there we go. Okay, so like I said, I didn't want to get caught up today doing just a lot of the one thing. So I'm going to, or one area. So I'm going to change it up now and stop working on the hair and bounce around to the clothing. I think that's a good first pass on the hair. Let's see how much I want to round it out later. refine this a bit. But now let's move on to the cloth a bit and the clothing of what this character is supposed to be wearing. Like this little chunk sticking out. It's kind of like very 90s, the Fawn's haircut. Okay, good. So with that done, I swear I keep saying it's done, but I never stop. Because you want to keep just noodling. You want to keep figuring out the area that you're in, but that's not very conducive to streaming. There we go. Okay. At some point I've got to abandon the hair here so that I can move on to other stuff. So this is as good a point as any. Cool. Okay, so with the clothing now, looking at it, check if you guys have any questions. Cool. All is well. Where did my concept go? There it is. You know what I need for his hair, according to the concept, is little tufts popping out the back here. That's just going to help it feel a bit more like hair too. Inflate those up. Pinch them down together a bit. Inflate those up again. Not bad. But that will actually help to match the silhouette of the character a bit better. Raise all of this up centrally. Maybe move this down. Have this be a bit rising. He's got a bit of a shaggy hair, so want to find those. Want to find that volume. Volume in the right places. I'm going to keep it shaggy, but not too shaggy. There we go. Okay, no more hair. So what I want to do right now is keep adding a bit more detail overall. So let's start merging these arm pieces together. And let me save this file since I haven't yet. This is the 5th session on Logan. And I want to hide some of these pieces for now so that I can just focus on the overall cloth and the body. Neat. Now I like to keep these pieces as separate as possible while I'm doing the proportions and blocking in. But after that's all done and I figured out the flow of the muscles, the anatomy, flow of the character's pose, then I like to mesh it all together. And in this case, we may want to keep a few things separate, but I'll definitely need to mesh, say, the top of the arm and the bottom of the arm. So let's select both of those, merge down. Same here. I tend to throw those down at the bottom. Merge down. Okay. So now I've got the arm. You know what? I may actually even merge both of those arms into each other because they're pretty far away. Divide it up. Delete lower and Dynamesh. Gives me a good base to start working. I'm trying to find a few more pieces here, looking at the concept. Now it looks to be like he's wearing a spacesuit, but there's a kind of a patch thing going on his elbows. All right, so right there, this whole area, it's kind of its own little band, like a patch, because you can see it happening on both sides with the elbow pads. Got a little badge kind of definition on the shirt. What appears to be cords dangling down, either from the robot, they look kind of like headphone cords. But basically, it's a really simple shape. It's just finding those planes for that shape, for the way it's falling. And there's a few little features to add. One would be the elbow pads, I guess you call them. The elbow pads. Another would be the end of the sleeves. This seems to be some sort of unit up here. So some sort of device for checking coordinates and random data. And then the patches. So all of these features, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I'll add on as kind of mesh extracts or as separate geometry, and the rest of the base shirt can be sculpted in place, and the base pants as well. So let me merge the base pants. Okay, got that piece and that piece. Got this piece. And let's merge them down. Check. Yep, we got all of that. And let's get this central hip piece as well. And now all of that is merged together, divided up, and Dynamesh. So now that's all, the pants are all one piece together. That way I can turn things off too, and then just focus on sculpting the pants if I want. Alright, looks like my music ended, so let's find another track. Didier Comte on Facebook, bonjour to you as well. Okay. The shoes will need to be sculpted later. I want to merge this into the body and then just kind of have one piece for the shirt and the arms together. Bit early to do that still. But I can start smoothing things out. With like a ripped chest like that, he looks like Tarzan of space. But we're going to add clothing on top of it, so I'm not going to worry too much about that just yet. I'm going to go to Insert Primitives and find a cylinder. Well, let's use a cylinder as a base there for the end of the sleeves. Find that, bury that in place, and we can split it off as well. And in this case, in order to save time, I'm just going to sculpt the one side, and then I'll duplicate it over to the other side. Let's make sure that sleeve is in fact going all the way around our hand. Sometimes you need to turn pieces off in order to see. Something like that. And make sure that sleeve is going all the way around. There we go. You can hear the music too now. Okay, digging those sleeves. It's kind of placed for now. I'm going to keep adding elements, but first let's save. Alright, Evan Ross Nay on Facebook is asking, what are the pros and cons of making clothes this way as opposed to masking and extruding? Or did you extrude? Came in a bit late. So Evan, for these sleeves that I made just now, these sleeve ends, they're just cylinders that I appended into place. So if I zoom in, you can see they're basically just a cylinder that was appended and sculpted directly in place. And eventually what I do is I end up dynameshing them anyway. Start off with a high enough resolution. So the topology doesn't really concern me right now a lot. And with these ends, I can kind of just hit them with inflate and it'll help to smooth them out. Now, the question was, as opposed to extruding them, and I do that all the time too. Like for example, there's really no right way to do clothes, but there's a few different ways you could do it. So for example, like those guys, I wanted to find the shape of the fitting the hand and arm first, and then I wanted to create the sleeve. So extracting those didn't make sense. But over here now, we want to extract kind of a patch. So first thing I want to do is divide up the arms a little bit. I want to extract this piece as our starting point. So I'm going to go to Subtool, let's see, delete lower. And this is the second way you can start making clothing. Subtool, extract, like that. Accept that. Drop that mask, start smoothing down. Now with 3D printing in mind, you got to make sure this is pretty thick. And another thing you may even want to do is grab all of that central stuff, invert that mask, drop that gizmo, and really just kind of move all of that really far central. So really you bury it all inside the mesh. And then dynamesh that. So this option is a bit better for working with 3D printable stuff because you really don't want there to be a gap between the top of the clothing and the bottom of the clothing. Alright, so now I'm going to try to refine and define this chunk. We can sculpt in some stuff there as well. I like trying to find the edge of that stuff whenever I can. And let's do another extract over here for the back end of this. Let's see, Subtool, extract, accept. And you can see the first thing I like to do is just to, even with an extract, is to just really figure out that big base shape, because this is kind of be like elbow pads or something. So you can start really smooth and vague. Another thing I might do using extract method, and this is the kind of thing extract is suited for, you know? I don't use it for everything, but since it's suited for this, I'll also use extract to figure out the badge kind of thing going on up here. Let's take a look at some of these elbow patch things and see what's going on with them. So they seem to be staying on the mesh below, so I'll do that. And they seem to have a very clear shape. Very spacey. So I can try to find a bit of those hard edge shapes just using pinch. And probably H-polish later. Dynamesh that. Try again using H-polish now. Make sure this is behaving as I want it to. Which it seems to be. And I'll probably, instead of doing this whole process again for the other side, once I've figured out the important stuff here, I won't extract on the other side. I'll just copy it over. So, not repeating my work. Now, for different purposes, you can use different methods to generate clothing, like Marvelous Designer or something else. But for 3D printed clothing, it's good to start with something that is all the way through the mesh. And turn my alpha off for clay, so I can use that the way I want. To add volume, then just use move again. slowly starting to find that elbow shape. Trying to match the concept a bit. I think I'm going to need to add some topology soon in order to keep matching it. So let's dynamesh this as a higher resolution. With hard surface topology, sometimes it's best to sculpt it symmetrically. But when you're trying to find it in a concept piece design, you use what you can. One thing I like to use is the clip brushes, because you can very quickly just clip and create nice sharp shapes. But you got to find the right angle for clip brushes to work well. Now it looks like, looking at its concept anyway, that the bottom part doesn't have that breakup at the end, but this does. And do that. Smooth that out. This is a bit closer to the concept that Ryan's got over on this side. Okay, don't want to get lost in these elbows. Too much detail. I think in general this is supposed to be our main hero protagonist character, so I don't want it to be too sharp-edged. The sharper edges on your character, the more they look I guess older, or like, you know, more refined or more purposeful or more driven. Okay. I'll use the damn standard tool to kind of refine that edge a bit. Now that I found the shape. I may do that around the edge here too. Okay. Double check the concept here. Yeah, there's only really one good view of it. Hard to know exactly what Ryan had in mind with these elbow pads, but he does seem to have a lot of crisscrossing going on him throughout. So I'm going to assume that there's some texture applied to him. So since I want this to be the same pad for the other side, I have to make some decisions as to the texturing, and then just pull the trigger. So one thing I can try to do is divide it up a bit. Let's see, to 7 million polys. Let's do a noise, a surface noise on them. So what I want to do is go under the tool palette to surface and do surface noise. Let's find it on here. Frame that in place. There we go. Cool. Alright, so that's the surface, and now let's use the noise plugin to find something a bit more, let's maybe spacey. Let's try hex tile, see what that does. Alright, so we're adjusting the plugin scale so that we can see stuff happening, and we can adjust how it's being projected onto there as well. So, how is this stuff being projected right now? Interactive, there's the scale, mortar thickness. Excuse me. Blah. You can see it kind of interactively updating as I work. And what I want to do first is just find the right scale. So reducing the X scale right now, and the Y scale, and the Z scale. There it goes. So Z scale doesn't seem to be doing much. If anything, it's just affecting the main mesh, main noise pattern. Y scale seems to be helping, Y and X. There we go. Starting to get a hex tile going. Up the strength here so we can see that happening. Alright, so hex tile might not be what I'm looking for. Let's try something else. Grid's interesting. Let's try some other stuff though. What is psychedelic? Too complicated. Plaid, maybe. This is kind of my workflow for working with surface noise, is to just try a bunch of different things and see what I'm liking. Oh, snakeskin gives us the effect we want, I think. I believe that's snakeskin. Let's see. Alright, that's pretty cool. That's pretty actually close to Ryan's concept. But want to tweak it a bit. Let's try increasing or decreasing the plugin scale. Let's try stretching things around a bit. There we go. Now we're cutting in. A bit hard to control the surface noise view, because even if you are half framed the thing you're looking for, it doesn't necessarily rotate around that frame point. Alright, so let's adjust some of these angles and see what happens. So this gives us kind of a continuous pattern. And let's adjust the angle a bit. No, not the angle. The Y scale a bit. Alright, we wanted this to be able to read and print, so let's try this and see what this looks like. And maybe just play with the angle just a touch. There we go. So now I've got that kind of pattern central to the back of the elbow pad. And let's click OK and see what it's looking like. Alright, so we've got it almost conforming to the mesh, at least on the one side. It's looking pretty good. And the other one's still a bit iffy. But then it all kind of falls apart near the edges. So let's try a different angle. And that's some of the problem with working with the surface noise, as you can see. It's kind of rotating it around and then framing. Let's see here. Adjusting the plugin scale might help. That would just make it more damaged. Let's try this. See what this looks like. Kind of all radiating out from a central point. And it looks pretty cool. So let's apply that. And let's try something also. Let me store a morph target before I apply the surface noise. Then apply the surface noise to mesh. And go back to my morph target. You know what, let me save before I do this, because sometimes morph targets tend to crash me. But with that morph target saved, I should be able to morph back to nothing, no surface texture, as well as pump it up a little bit more. And so this is one trick I learned, kind of following the Maya blend ship trick pattern. And now we can even smooth some of these out and those crevices will be even deeper. So we get kind of an interesting pattern around the elbows. Looks a bit cross-hatched, radiating out from that central elbow point. I may keep it as a backup though, in case I want to change this pattern. But looks pretty good for now. Let's move forward. Use the dam standard tool here to refine this a bit. So it kind of feels like it's pulling out towards the edge. And let's divide as well. Cool. So I want to hint at the start of that crumpling. And I can really enhance it by adding a dam standard negative up at the top, holding Alt. And if I want to simulate more gravity, I can just come in using inflate and then just inflate that top bit. So it's kind of a two-step process, but it works. Okay, let's see what this is looking like in context. Let's turn all this stuff back on. Got some extra bits in my scene now that I can probably delete. That was the earlier mini test that we did when we printed this out at miniature scale. Also get rid of this backpack extra. Scene cleaned up a little bit, good. Alright, so now we've added those end sleeves right there. Probably merge these two together. Keep my scene a bit cleaner. So we've added those end sleeves and we've added these elbow pads. So I'm going to continue refining these later, but now that we've added these in, I'm going to probably merge with this. You know what? Scratch that. I'm going to auto groups and split those because this is a bit too heavy. I want to decimate it down. So group split. So that piece is 6.8 million polys because we use that Noise Master surface plugin. Let me pre-process and decimate that and check if you guys have any questions going on. Okay. Ben Vikar saying, I miss catching up with you in the summit. Sorry I didn't see you, man. Too many people. All sorts of people. Typhoon06 on Twitch is blessing me. Thank you for your blessings. Alright, this is still pre-processing. Let's give it a second. But I'll mirror that over to the other side, and that way we'll have both elbow pads, both sleeve ends figured out. And then what was next? Oh, the shoulder patches. And I'll do the shoulder patches right now. And then we'll have all the elements we need for the shirt, and I'll just sculpt it down. And actually probably continue it on the next stream. Slowly you can see how this thing comes alive. You can watch the previous week's streams to catch up and see how we got to this point. Let's see here. And as a reminder, if you want to watch my previous streams, they'll be under Pixologic.com, ZBrushLIVE presenters. Scroll down through all these awesome people to Aiman Akhtar. And you can scroll down to see how we started Ryan's project. And after 1, 2, 3 weeks, and we even did a little mini print test to see what it would look like after we roughed out the proportions. Now we're at a stage where we've started adding some of these detailed elements. So I'll drop that link in Twitch and Facebook. You guys can see me on here every Monday, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. LA time. Alright, that's done pre-processing, so let's decimate. Alright, so 1.3 million polys, still a bit high. Let's do it at 10% decimate. Alright, cool. So we didn't really lose any of our detail. And now I can merge those pieces together, duplicate them, and move them on over to the other elbow. Have you guys gotten used to the new Gizmo tool yet? It's pretty cool and powerful. I'm still getting used to it myself though. Solo that out. Oh, clicked expose by mistake. Solo that out. Move it up. Move it down. There's one thing ZBrush can definitely work on a bit better is to make it a bit easier to navigate around the scene. Now this tube's a bit in my way, so I'm going to hide that. Alright, that's about where the elbow would be for this character, maybe a bit higher. So I'll rotate that up. Rotate that down. And pull that out to the edge. Now I should just have to move it in place. And pretty close. Alright, there we go. Now we got it lined up to the elbow. You can just stretch it down to fit. I'm going to want to do a little pinch over here because it's pinched a lot tighter than the other side. Alright, that is moved in place. I'm going to hide a bit of this so I can fix just this one arm. Okay. That's filling that gap nicely now. Alright, so now we've got both the sleeves and the elbow patches blocked in. And lastly, what I'll do is block in the little patch that's on the sides. So I can do this by masking. Turning off my mask. And I can refine that mask, not lassoing, but using the mask pen. Though I'll likely have to clip and sculpt the shape anyway. This will give us a good starting base. Okay. And I'll do the other end separately. But first, let's start by extracting this. Alright, so there's our starting of the patch. And like I said, because we're 3D printing, we want to make sure that all of this end is a bit buried into our mesh. Just going to mask a bit, select it all. And you'll notice though, if I'm masking, it may start selecting things on the other side. So if you want to avoid that, when you press Control, turn off the backface masking. So that's under auto masking, I believe, backface mask. So you have to press Control when you do this, otherwise it's not going to work for your mask tool. And now when I mask, it really shouldn't select anything on the other end. You can bury this in a bit. It's called drafting it a bit. And now with it buried into my arm a bit, I don't need to worry about any issues when it prints. So now I can come in and actually sculpt and refine the shape a bit. Mr. Animation saying it's a bit confusing. Yep, I agree. We're referring to the gizmo earlier. It can be a pain. But, you know, gotta try to adjust to new stuff. New tools. New powers. New roles. Alright. So that gives us the start of those patches. Can divide them up a bit. And what I want to do is kind of create like a edge border thing going on for those. But first, let's just refine the shape and Dynamesh it. You go to Geometry, Dynamesh, boom. Could try one thing also, which is to just kind of bury this central section, because it seems what we're looking for is basically just an outline. Dynamesh that. Start smoothing this border edge. You can kind of just refine it now. Make it as thin and thick as we want it to be. It's starting to really feel like a spacesuit now, before even we've done any real cloth sculpting at this point. Just laying out the elements. There we go. And so that kind of thing we'll probably have to do on the other end, because I could try to duplicate it. I don't know if it would work very well. Sometimes it's easier to just do a mesh extract on the other side. But we'll try to look at the shape more that Ryan's got. Feels more like a shield than a straight up triangle. That's one thing I like about mesh extracting, is I can still work with it after the fact, as opposed to as if I had drawn it onto the mesh. I'll probably leave these pieces as is, so that I can refine the shirt underneath and then keep adjusting as I need to. Let's add his teeth in there and a tongue so that we can see a bit more of the face develop. May just grab a mask for this inside of the mouth, soften it, invert it, and then just move it in place deeper. And possibly even move it in a bit, so kind of get a little mouth cavity going. Dynamesh that. Now that we've got a bit of a mouth cavity going, we can place a tongue and teeth in there, at least as a placeholder. So I can start with the insert primitive cube. Yeah, let's try cube. Standard cube, drawn out. I'm going to switch the transpose direction a couple of times to get the shape I want. Bury that in place a bit. Let's make it a bit thicker too. And I will split it off by splitting unmasked points. Alright, looking good. Let's Dynamesh that. And what I want to do is have it resemble teeth. A row of teeth, in any case. I'm going to move those edges in and that center out a bit. There we go. We have our teeth. The more elements we add, the more it'll look like the concept, the more it'll feel better. We'll try to find the feel of the character. But because we're thinking about keeping this 3D printable, I'm not going to make that mouth cavity really large, or, you know, as if you were actually going to put like an animated character's mouth in there. I'm going to keep it pretty simple. Alright, so that's it for today's stream, guys. Thanks for joining, guys and gals. Started adding more of the base elements, started refining overall. I'm going to continue refining the legs and the clothing next week. And hopefully we'll get it to a point where we're super stoked with it. Alright, thanks for joining me, guys and gals. I will see you next week, Monday, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And we'll take it from there. Ha! Joe Mena, thanks for joining, man. Good to see you at the summit as well. Thanks for joining all. Thanks for joining all. Kmart just tuned in. Well, tune in next week or just watch the live stream later on my channel. Pixologic.com, ZBrushLIVE, Aiman Akhtar. And you can see all sorts of goodies there. Alright guys, see you next time. Ciao.